slides to kind of talk about kind of what we do at Vineyard Golf Club. Even though everything's related to the golf course, I hope that a lot of things we do can relate to homeowners and landscapers and even gardens, what have you. So hopefully all of you can take something from this presentation. I could probably speak 4 hours about organic management and golf course management, but I'm going to try and squeeze everything into 15 or 20 minutes. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions at the end. Sometimes I just ramble. These things are just come natural to me. So in case I'm going too fast or you really don't know what I'm talking about, please feel free to interrupt me. I started work this morning at 3:30, so I'm starting to get a little tired. So, so as you know, I am the golf course superintendent, director of agronomy at Vineyard Golf Club. And this presentation, we're going to talk about basically how we manage the golf course grounds, not just all the turf we have, but we have almost 100 acres of maintained turf grass, different varieties and different grass species for different areas that I'll talk about. But even a lot of our gardens and our trees as well are all organically managed. This is a photo of the golf club. This is our first hole. This kind of gives you a background of just how we have very open land. We have over 7 acres of these sandy waste areas, which give it a very vineyard, Cape Cod, dunny feel. We have maintained grass. You might be able to see where all the trees are. We call those our natural areas, which are mainly huckleberry, little blue stem, just some beautiful wildflowers. Unfortunately, a lot of these areas are being taken over by crabgrass, a lot of poison ivy. We have some bittersweet coming in, so we'll talk about how we manage that as well. But this kind of gives everyone an idea of the layout of the golf course. And we, as I mentioned earlier, we are the industry leaders in organic management. I know there is a golf club in Colorado that chooses to be organic, and clients where we're getting the home lawns to be more organic. And at the end of the day, you know, what we do organically is successful. It's definitely more stressful. Each site is so different, but I think trending from an industry standpoint in the future, organic is definitely gonna be the way that we see a lot of golf courses, sports fields, ballparks going. So when I got asked to present, I was gonna bore everybody with golf course management, but when I started thinking about how I wanted to present this, a lot of the issues that we see on the golf course are the same with every home lawn or park, the few that I've been to. We all deal with weeds, fungus, irrigation issues, traffic stress, whether that's golf carts or hosting a cocktail party or a wedding reception. Pest, we constantly deal with crow damage, skunk damage. We have a lot of grubs, and we have geese as well. And I guess not many people think geese cause issues, but besides the cleanup every morning, they eat a lot of our clover, which is in a lot of our roughs. And when the clover's gone, we introduce bare ground, and usually we get crabgrass or goosegrass that comes into these bare grounds. And it's not an issue for everybody, but for us it is. And at the end of the day, even back to my time when I was at Nantucket Golf Club, I was fortunate. My boss at the time was on the Nantucket Conservation Committee, and we were in the early stages of writing the local fertilizer law, which then got introduced to the Vineyard and the rest of Cape Cod. So I've got a pretty strong background between Nantucket and here. How do we provide the best turf grass, playability, aesthetically, while not going over on our nitrogen? And even when we were at Nantucket, we were allowed to use 3 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per given season, April till October. And when we were at Nantucket, I think the most we ever used was 1.5 pounds. And that was for newer sod that just needed a little bit more love. Here, we definitely stay under 3 pounds as well. We're closer to 2, just because without the use of pesticides, we just have different issues and need a little bit more nitrogen just to kind of grow out of some fungus issues. But at the end of the day, we stay under our goal and we're successful at the same time. And at the end of the day, all these things, we're just trying to increase our turf quality. For us, the healthier the grass, the less issues we're going to have. And we actually do that without using nitrogen or phosphorus. And I'm going to kind of go over kind of how we do that. And a lot of it is fertilizer based and soil amendment based. And by soil amendment, it could be anything from gypsum or lime. And I'll show a slide later, but we actually inject sand into our soils for playability and turf purposes. But some of the amendments we use in our sand are biochar or compost that have beneficial bacteria that help us fight against fungus. So I'll go over those. We are the organic golf club, so we use biological pesticides. I'll go over those. A lot of what we do for fertilizer amendments and pesticides can be carried over into home lawns. I'll discuss how airflow is such a huge practice for us. Airflow is probably one of the most important things that we've introduced the last 2 years. And I've got a really good photo to show how we do that. Top dressing, aeration, seed selection. I think a really underrated practice for a lot of golf courses, but also home lawns too, is choosing the right seed. There's a lot of money in private funding for thousands and thousands of different types of seed. And all you really need is for a site visit and for a soil test. And from there, if you can get the right seed, you're actually going to solve a lot of your issues, whether it's wet soils or there's grasses that do well with very little nitrogen. So seed selection is a very important piece of what we do here. And then weed management and moisture management. So I'm kind of go over these pointers right now. So fertilizer and amendments, these are some of the products that we use. And the first one is actually a newer product, which I think is going to help a lot of homeowners in coastal communities, whether it's Great Pond or on the Bay or all the towns in Cape Cod. But Rhizosorb is actually, if you guys can see the photo of the spreader to the right, it's a very fine white powder or granular, excuse me, that can be spread out by a spreader. And we actually inject Rhizosorb with sand into some of our playing areas on the golf course. And what Rhizosorb does, it was invented at Penn State University a few years back. And it's, please don't quote me here, but whatever its competition is, when Rhizosorb is in the soil, it attracts phosphorus ions in the soil over 100,000 times greater than any of its competition. And this product is very new to golf courses. And for me, when I first got introduced to this, the one nice thing about being the golf course manager at Vineyard Golf Club is we are the industry leader. So I usually get first notice of any new products. We do a lot of trials, and that helps us out greatly. But Rhizosorb was one of those products. And it's very big for a lot of, the owner of the company works for a lot of wetlands. And knowing that Rhizosorb absorbs phosphorus 100,000 times greater than its competition is very good. And I know it's in the process of being introduced to landscapers. It's being distributed through larger companies.
So why do we want this? Is this so we make the phosphorus bioavailable for the plants, or why do we want to use it?
Yes. So yeah, pretty much. So the reason that we use it, and to your point as well, through our soil tests, we have a lot of phosphorus in our soils. However, the phosphorus that's in our soil, the plant cannot take up. Phosphorus is good for turf at the golf course and some lawns to a degree, but the Rhizosorb, it helps the roots take up all the phosphorus, which is important because for the local fertilizer laws, we can't use phosphorus unless your soil tests say that you're below a certain point. And for us, phosphorus is good for root growth. It actually helps fight against certain turf diseases. So when we first learned this product, we started using it. And more so, we do have ponds in our golf course. We want to eliminate any sort of runoff whatsoever. Because when I first got there, we did have some algae growing in our ponds. We actually installed some subsurface aerators. And now that we're using Rhizosorb, I like to think that helps as well, allowing the plant to take up that phosphorus and really get rid of any leaching we may cause, not on purpose, but and for us, it's kind of a win-win. So we inject it, but it can be spread and then just lightly watered in so it gets down into the soil where the roots are. And from there, once it's in the soil, then it has the power to adhere to the roots and attract phosphorus ions. But the good thing about that is, as well, not only phosphorus, but this product also allows our roots on the golf course. It helps with nitrogen, potassium, which are the three main elements that the turf needs. So a lot of people don't know about this product, but it's going to be on the market very soon. And I think for a lot of coastal communities, it could be a really good thing. And then below that are just some of the products that we use. These are all organic fertilizer companies: Nature Safe, Sustain, Ocean Organics. And Nature Safe and Sustain, their main ingredients are either poultry-based or turkey litter or chicken litter. And Ocean Organics is mainly, their active ingredients are actually crab shell, seaweed. And for us, they actually work really well. There's the past few years has been a lot of positive changes in products for organic products, and they work great. And one, I'll talk more about this later too, but one of the things that we do to reduce our nitrogen use, we actually microfeed other small nutrients to the turf grass. We have organic acid compounds of iron and manganese, and they go out at very, very, very small amounts. And what iron and manganese do to keep your nitrogen down, iron and manganese actually enhance the natural green color of the turf, which therefore enhances photosynthesis. And these products are also very good against certain fungus patch diseases on the golf course and home lawns as well. So, and like I said before, a lot of our products are all Armory and Biosolid approved. So if there is any interest, we can definitely talk after, but quickly, if you want to write some of these brands down, they're great from a organic fertilizer standpoint. And I'm going to move on unless anybody has a quick question on those. And another very important part of what we do is our biological pesticides. Just like the fertilizers, they've come a very long way. Even just my 4 years being at Vineyard Golf Club. And a lot of our biological pesticides are actually active bacteria, beneficial bacteria, or parasites. And what they do, a lot of them are soil borne. So we spray these beneficial bacteria into a tank onto the turf grass, and then we run our irrigation heads for 1 minute. And that allows that product to get just below the turf and adhere to all the root hairs that are in the soil. And what these beneficial bacteria do, they attach to the root hairs, they colonize, and they essentially, long story short, prevent any fungus from entering into the roots. Because at the golf course and on home lawns too, a lot of our turf diseases, fungus, a lot of them are soil borne. And the photo to the right here is actually, it's a very magnified photo of a white grub. And then all those little, those are all beneficial nematodes attacking the white grub. And being on the golf course, I would say dealing with grubs is probably the hardest thing that we deal with, just because we don't really know where they are until the damage is done. And every year it's very different. And these beneficial nematodes are expensive, so we don't have the power to spray it wall to wall. But usually around this time of year, right around Labor Day, we start to see damage from skunks and crows. And as soon as we get a good idea of where the damage is, then we go with our sprayers and spray these nematodes. And I've personally gone out with our microscope, dug into the soil, found the grubs. After a spray like this, you can actually see the nematodes attacking the grubs. And for us, it allows us to not resod an area. And at the same time, we're not using a synthetic pesticide to kill any grubs, which is great. Some of our other biological pesticides that are common in home lawns as well are actually organic mineral oils. And how these work is that essentially puts a film around the turf grass. So if there's any leaf-borne fungus that attacks, it has a harder time getting through that film. So it's almost like just layering up the turf grass with just a small film of oil. and it actually works really well. We do use nitrogen at very small amounts. It's all soy-based. We get certain turf diseases that we have to grow out of. So we spoon feed very, very small amounts, but our nitrogen is all soy-based.
Why is soy-based good? Why do we want soy-based?
To be honest, it's probably one of the only liquid organic nitrogen sources that seem to work well from an organic standpoint. We can't use traditional ammonium sulfate or other main sources of nitrogen, but we've tried ground up very, very, very fine water soluble chicken litter, turkey litter, but the soy-based nitrogen is just very clean. And from a turf reaction, you're getting just a better reaction at a small amount. If that makes sense. Sorry.
That makes sense. Not wanting to add other things.
Yeah.
Simplify the process. That makes sense.
So that's just a really breakdown of how we treat our turf grass from a fungus standpoint, but also from a grub standpoint too. Are there any other questions on our pesticide use? Like I said, again, I'm sorry, I can't see anybody's faces.
Everyone's shaking their heads no. Oh, there's one.
No, I have one question. It's Melissa. Do you have a problem with moles ever going after your grubs? Does the nematode treatment help against moles?
Thankfully, we do not. That's always something that I worry about because I'm not really sure.
I think your audio cut out.
Don't like cinnamon. It's similar to voles. I don't know what it is they don't like, but there are powders and products that you can put in a backpack sprayer that I've seen some caretakers spray around some properties. So there are products in case you do have a vole disease or vole damage that you can spread or spray. And it's usually just some sort of smell, some sort of deterrent that keeps the voles away. So I was talking earlier, and I'm not expecting anybody to put a fan like this on their lawn, but for us, one of the biggest things to help our grass survive, especially this past summer where we had record heat, very warm nights, and very little rainfall, we actually have fans. This is a fan that we have on our golf course. We have it around 5 of our greens, and the greens that we have them on are actually microclimates. They're either tucked in the corner, they see the most shade, they always have the most moisture, and there's a lack of airflow. And these 5 greens that we put the fans on, were always the problematic areas my first 3 years here. They were always the first areas to lose turf. They were always the areas that stayed wet. If we ever had a fungus outbreak, they were the first areas to receive it. So we started doing more research, and the club made the investment to allow fans to go on the golf course. And we've had a successful year 1 with them. And it's amazing the difference in turf quality, what a little airflow can do. And like I said, I'm not expecting homeowners to put these fans on their lawns, but one thing we did, I spent a summer on Long Island. And when I was in Long Island, we had 2 areas of the golf course that same issue, had terrible airflow. We were losing grass, and we made a huge commitment that fall and winter. We took out all the brush. A lot of the brush was 3 to 4 feet tall. We cleared some dead branches, and that next summer, it was amazing how much better the turf quality was. And where we brush cut everything, we actually planted some fescue seed. So it wasn't bare ground, but we allowed the fescue to grow up, kind of be wispy in the wind at maybe a foot tall. But if any of the homeowners here, if you're having some issues in certain areas where you have a lot of brush or lack of airflow, I think you'll be amazed by how much a little clearing can help. But I'm going to move on for that unless there's any quick questions. Everybody's shaking their head. One One other practice we do to help eliminate the use of nitrogen, we aerify our surfaces a lot, and there's different versions of aerating. And I'll go over the photo that you see here, but I'm sure you've seen a lot of aerators where they pull up the grass and the soil and the roots, and then they rake it up and throw away. We do that to eliminate thatch. We actually have aerators that inject air into the soil. And we have a photo that you see on the right here. This is a machine called a dry eject, and it's very popular on golf courses and sports fields. And we actually use it on a few lawns when I was over on Nantucket, and I know there's a client or two out here that used it on their lawn as well. But what it does, it injects sand and amendments, kind of how I mentioned earlier, right through the grass into the soil. And the reason why it's good, for us, it's good because it doesn't affect playability and there's no cleanup. What you do, there's a hopper right there. You just throw sand, whatever amendment you would like to use, and it attaches to your irrigation system. And then it uses the force of water to make holes into the lawn. And, you know, most people use sand because in a lot of lawns, and even on the golf course, a lot of areas have thatch issues. And thatch, lack of a better term, is a sponge in the soil. And that's where a lot of insects, grubs, and all the fungus survive while they're in the soil. And when conditions are right, they reemerge from the thatch and cause damage to all of our turf grass. So the aeration that you see here, and any aeration, eliminates the thatch and usually replaces it with air or sand or what have you. But it's pretty amazing. We started aerating, like I said, a lot, and we've been able to cut our nitrogen down. And for some reason, when we do these practices, our turf grass just reacts in a better way. It's almost like after a rainfall. The rainfall almost acts as a mineralization in the soil, releases nutrients, and the grass just perks up. And we see the same thing when we use aerations of this kind, injecting air into the soil. We're allowed to get another surge of growth in our turf without using any fertilizers at all. So for us, practice like this is just so important. And another reason why we do it, for us, we can't use any herbicides. And over the course of the years, the weeds have become kind of an issue, and they're spreading very fast. So for us, it's crazy to think, but if you picture the grass here, the soil here, we keep throwing sand down. And each time we throw sand down, our seed bank keeps dropping lower and lower and lower. So in a way for us, it's actually not only we aerifying, getting rid of thatch, creating a better soil, but we're actually burying our seed bank, which is very helpful. So, which can be very helpful in home lawns as well. Seed selection, which I mentioned earlier, is very underrated. We use a company called Seed Research out of Oregon, and they're kind of the leaders in at least golf course seed, but they're starting to venture into other seeds that are used on home lawns. And we buy all their seed through them. We've done trials with their seed, and same thing for us. We use many different seeds on the golf course, and all for different reason. And certain areas of the golf course, certain heights of cut, are more prone to certain diseases. And sometimes these diseases happen because we have a lot of organic nitrates bound up in our soil. So for us, we started slice seeding certain bent grasses into our greens that require very little nitrogen and are resistant to a lot of the turf diseases that we see. And we've been very aggressive with our overseeding practices the last 2 years. And it's really amazing. And we do trials on the golf course. Before we put anything on the golf course, we have maybe an acre in total of different trial plots. And that's where we do a lot of our seed studies. It's pretty amazing how some seeds through a very wet spring and a harsh summer were completely disease and stress-free and under very little maintenance. So these seeds do work. There's a website you can see there called NTEP, NTEP. if you go on their website, you can see a lot of the seed research that is done. It'll allow you to, for certain heights of cut, for different soils, which seeds require less nitrogen, which don't need phosphorus. So it's pretty amazing. There's a lot of research out there. So seed is a very underrated practice that I feel is very overlooked. But for us, it's great. All the seed we use, it helps us fight weeds, whether it's in the very early spring green up. And like I mentioned earlier, allows us to fight a lot of fungus and allows us to keep our water and nitrogen down. So weed management is another huge thing, very important practice, what we do at Vineyard Golf Club. That's a very exaggerated burn in my photo, but it's something that we at the golf club are exploring. We've done a burn on the golf course already. In our areas, we have poison ivy everywhere. We have bittersweet starting to come in, and many other weeds that we just don't want. And burning helps. And I'm not sure what everybody's lawn type is like, whether it's maintained or native grasses, but there's even techniques where people use spot burning. On the golf course, we do a lot of spot spraying just to keep costs down. A lot of our sprayers are 300-gallon tanks, and a lot of our organic products, because of supply and demand, I'm sometimes the only person in America buying these products. So you can only imagine the leeway on time to make it, what the cost is. So for us, we are fortunate where we have the labor to fill up little 3-gallon back sprayers. And a lot of our herbicides are organic, and we use 2 of them. There's one that I call the organic Roundup, and what it is just it's a soapy acid, and we use it on a lot of our patios, bricks. It dries out poison ivy. You do have to make a second or third application, but it will dry out poison ivy for 2 weeks at a time. So for us, that is just huge, because we do have a lot of high school labor that aren't necessarily educated on what poison ivy looks like. And what we try to do, we send more of our full-time labor who are more educated, and they spray the poison ivy. And then we're fortunate where we have the help to try and, as it's dried up and not contagious, to try and hand pull as much poison ivy as we can. So that product has been huge for us. And I know a few of our members at the golf course have asked me about it, because they see how well it works on the golf course, and I know it's spreading to
What's it called again?
It's called Final San, FINALSAN. And our second herbicide is called Fiesta. And what Fiesta is, it's just a very, very strong liquid iron that is organic certified. And that we use for dandelions that are in just areas where we don't want dandelions, and clover as well. Clover doesn't necessarily like iron. And unfortunately, there's areas of the golf course too where we just prefer not to have clover. But for us, it's the same thing. It's easy as putting it into a backpack sprayer and spot spraying a lot of these areas. Again, we keep costs down. We're able to, once the weeds die back, we go out with some sand and seed and bring what was weed now turf. And Fiesta is a great product too. The only problem with Fiesta is that you definitely don't want to use an iron-based herbicide around any patios or pools, because it will stain any sort of brick. But it is great for on home lawns or what have you. And you can tell it works too, because about an hour after you spray it, the weed turns completely black. So for us, it's a great visible tool as well. And for us on the golf course, we have 7 acres of sand areas that are maintained. And without the use of herbicides, a lot of golf courses will actually spray their sand areas with a pre-emergent, just so they don't have to do what we do at Vineyard Golf Club. And we're fortunate where we have a really good relationship with Donaroma's nursery. And about once every 3 weeks, we bring in 8 of their employees to help us pull weeds. So, it's one of those things where it works for us. And I'm sure if, from an organic standpoint, If your lawn becomes infested, it is possible to reach out to your local landscape company to pull it as well. Oh no, that's not how I want it to load. But this just, if you tilt your head, this is a tee box at the golf course, and we have special tools. This is one of the tee surfaces that always gets overpopulated with dandelions in the spring. So we simply, this is just a photo of all the dandelions pulled up. One of our workers sent me this photo, and we just go around. We come back after with just sand and seed, and every year the population keeps going down and down. And unfortunately, this tee was actually sodded 3 years ago because we had really bad grub damage. And before that, we didn't have a weed problem. But one thing to be mindful about too is that in a lot of new sod, we've tested as well, there's a very high seed bank in a lot of these sod rolls. Irrigation management. This is so important to our success at Vineyard Golf Club and for any lawn as well. Overwatering is one of the worst things that we can do at Vineyard Golf Club for so many reasons. And this is actually a photo that you see here. This is actually a client of mine on a brand new seeded lawn. And it was a stretch in July where we were very warm, very humid. Nighttime temperatures were in the high 70s, and from a seed standpoint, it wasn't the best time to seed. But unfortunately, the hose was left on overnight, and this fungus broke out. And this fungus is called Pythium. It's one of the worst diseases that you ever want to see on your turf grass, because once you see it, that means your lawn is going to die. There's nothing you can do to save it once you get to this point. But unfortunately, over irrigating caused this, and we have to go back in the fall and redo the lawn. But also what overwatering can do is the obvious, which is the fertilizer runoff, which is what causes a lot of the issues in your pond, whether it's algae growth. I know when I was on Nantucket, we had a huge decline in our eelgrass population, and I'm sure it's the same here. Maybe at some point, maybe this is a better year or whatnot, but as we educate more landscapers and homeowners, but it's amazing between the septic and the fertilizer runoff, what it can do to our water ecosystems. But between the fertilizer runoff, which is not great for our waterways, fungus outbreak, which is not good for me, and it can happen on home lawns where fungus can come in overnight, just like you see in the photo here, and most of the times it's hard to bring it back. Over irrigating where it's hot and humid, turf decline, and if you start seeing turf decline and you recently fertilized, you're going to cause more fertilizer runoff because there's nothing for that fertilizer to attract to. And I've seen it so many times. If we can somehow control irrigation during heavy rainfalls, that's just a simple thing that would help solve some issues as well. And I know we have it at the golf course. We have a small landscape area at our practice area, and we actually have a rain collector that attaches to our irrigation controls system. And once we hit, say, 0.1 inches of rainfall within 12 hours, our irrigation automatically turns off. And then I have to
saying homeowners, if they want to catch it themselves and they either detect rain or they know it's in the forecast, to just turn off their irrigation once there's 1/10 of an inch of rain.
Yeah, so there are pieces of equipment that you can attach to your irrigation that can, say, if we get 0.1 or 0.2, depending what your soil type is like, there are devices that can attach to some home irrigation systems that will shut your system off if you get X amount of rain. So if you do, it'd be worth asking your landscaper about, or your caretaker, what have you. But that is an option for some systems. And I know at least the companies that we use for golf course irrigation, that's becoming a very popular thing too. So I'm sure, if not now, sometime soon, maybe your system will have that part for it. So. I kind of talked about it earlier, unwanted pest. Unfortunately, when it comes to unwanted pest, that's when we tend to use more fertilizer. And because some of our crow and skunk damage is just so bad that the only option is to sod. It's usually too late in the year to seed, and our springs on the vineyard are so poor from a growing standpoint that once the grass does start to grow for us in either May or June, we're starting to see weeds grow just as quickly as the grass. So for us, from a playability standpoint or from an aesthetic standpoint, we have to rely on sod. And for the first year of sod, because we don't use pesticides, it needs that extra nitrogen and it needs that extra water. So for us, we try so hard to eliminate any pest damage, whether it's even this morning, I had an employee who was at the golf course at 4 a.m. with headlamps on, checking for skunk damage. And unfortunately, and that's part of what we do at Vineyard Golf Club. But my main goal is to really keep that sod down. I don't want to add more fertilizer and water if I don't have to. So for us, keeping pest away or at least scouting for it is one of the best things that we could do to keep our nitrogen down. And like I said, that all comes as crows, skunks, geese. And we were fortunate. We actually we purchased a border collie 2 years ago who actually lives with me and my family, and our goose damage has completely gone away. So it was a big investment, but thankfully she's a great dog. So in conclusion, all in all, what we do at Vineyard Golf Club to help keep our nitrogen down, I do rely heavily on very, very small amounts of iron and manganese. There are a lot of fertilizers that have it in the label. It's just a matter of seeing it there or asking for a fertilizer that has small doses in there. Not a lot of fertilizers don't have a lot of these products in it anyways, but even just a little bit it will allow your turf grass to become more green without relying heavily on nitrogen. And you're still enhancing your photosynthesis and allowing the plant to survive on a daily basis. Soil test. If you have not done a soil test, I suggest that you do. It can tell you a lot about what's right and what's wrong. For us, we have certain areas of the golf course where we're very low on calcium, very low on magnesium, and we have other areas of the golf course where we have a little bit of salt in our soils. So for us, instead of going wall to wall with these products, it allows us to really give what the grass needs. So I would highly suggest doing a soil test. Improving the soil. I've noticed that being at Vineyard Golf Club and managing turf organically, that the better the soil, the better our turf is. Picking the right grass species is so underrated, and there is a lot of research out there. And I'll gladly help anyone here after this meeting in doing so. And at the end of the day, healthier the turf, the less problems we have at Vineyard Golf Club. And that's it. I hope I answered some questions. Like I said, there we go. Vineyard Golf Club is so unique. The organic practice, we can go on and on and on, but I wanted to kind of keep it simple, but I'll gladly answer any questions that anybody has.
Thank you for that thorough presentation and for letting us know about new products. I think the fact that you were testing things out ahead of time and sort of leading the curve, that's a really exciting thing to have someone local doing that work. So thank you for taking the time and explaining this to us. I'm sure there are some questions here.
Kevin, I have a question about a product. I think I was trying to write notes about something else, and you were talking about something that helps with weeds on patios.
Yep.
Was it soapy acids? Was that what you were talking
Yeah.
about?
Yep. So it's called Final Sand, FINALSAN.
And FINALSAN. Okay. And is that something that you spray just, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
is it a concentrated thing or is it a,
Yeah. So for us, it comes in a 2.5 gallon jug. In the label, there's different mixes for different weed pressures, depending
okay.
on how bad your issue is, or if it's just minimal, it says, it's 10 fluid ounces per gallon of water.
Okay. Okay.
Issue
So
with that,
so
it
you
might go-
dilute it.
yeah.
You dilute it down. Yeah. Okay.
And for some reason, sometimes Final Sand is tough to find online, but when you look at the label of Final Sand online, if you just Google search what the active ingredient is, you'll be able to find another similar product just by a different name that has the same active
Okay.
ingredient.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
And for us, it works well because it doesn't stain our bricks at all. But it'd be worth maybe trying first, just doing a little squirt bottle, just making sure that there were no staining issues. But for us, it does not stain.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Looks like
And
it's on
also-
Amazon.
Is it?
And sorry, I meant to bring this up too. It just popped in my head. But another good organic herbicide is actually called horticultural vinegar.
Huh.
And it's just a very, very acid-based vinegar. The only thing about it, it's got it leaves a terrible smell. But if you can get over that for a few hours,
Nothing can be worse than Bob-X.
but it has to be sunny out for it to work.
Yeah.
But that's another option that does not stain. That definitely does not stain.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions for Kevin? He's probably a bit tired if he's been up since 3:30.
I just got my fourth wind. I'm ready. I'm ready to go play with the kids. So, but I know a lot of the things we don't do revolve around waterways or ponds, but a lot of the issues that come with the ponds do revolve around turf care. So, like I said, I hope somebody, all of you, hopefully gain something from this talk. And please feel free to reach out anytime after this, and I'll gladly help out any way I can.
Thank you so much. And you're in our watershed, so what you do has an impact on us. So
That is true.
thank you for your stewardship.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
What was that, Bob?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
Cheers, everyone. Have a good evening.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.